Your gas can be stored for a year or even 2 years if you're doing all these things. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Pilot Patriot channel. Today we're going to talk about how to store gasoline long term for emergency fuel storage. Now, most people already have at least one gas can laying around for your lawnmower or something like that. But what are you going to do in a long-term situation where maybe there's been a natural disaster like a hurricane? It is hurricane season right now, and every time we have a big storm like that, all that gas gets balled up, power goes out. It could be several days before you're able to go fill up your car, fill up your generator, that kind of thing. So you do want to have some emergency fuel stored for those types of situations. And we're going to talk about the best way to do that and some right ways and wrong ways to store fuel. But before we do that, if you like these kind of videos, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, give us a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time we upload new videos. Now let's get right to it. Now, what most people have is something like this red plastic gas can here. It's just your standard gas can that you can pick up at Walmart or Lowe's or anything like that. It's fairly thin plastic, and most of the time nowadays especially, they have those really annoying safety nozzles on there that really require you to have 3 hands to even pour gas out of the crazy things. And those are fine for short-term storage, or if that's all you have, that's perfectly fine. You can just use something like that from Walmart. But there are some cons to something like that. We already talked about the nozzle. So most nozzles nowadays have to have so many safety features. You have to press a button to get the gas to come out. There's no way for air to flow in so that it'll pour easier. Lots of issues with that kind of stuff. The other problem is with these really thin gas cans, you can see on this one how deformed this one is. And that's because on these thin plastic gas cans, in heat or just over time, they will expand and contract with the temperature, and over time they will get deformed like this. So that's the issue with those, and that is something to think about. If you do already have several of these types of gas cans laying around, I would recommend that you get some type of easy flow nozzles on there, and I will link to some of those below. There's a company called Easy Flow that makes aftermarket nozzles for these that really just takes it back to the old school. It's just a regular flexible plastic nozzle that you just pour it out of. It's so much easier to work with. And those Easy Flow nozzles also come with a cap where you can actually cap this off for storage. Another issue with these types of gas cans is they leak. There's no way that you would be able to transport this inside a vehicle or just leave this in the back of your truck for a long time, because if it gets knocked over as you're riding around, it's going to splash, it's going to spill. You couldn't take it inside your vehicle because of the vapors and things like that. So it doesn't work for people that have SUVs and vans and things like that if they wanted to transport it. There is a company called Spectre that makes some real heavy-duty military grade plastic gas cans that are a lot better. They're a lot thicker. I'll roll in a picture of what those look like. They're a lot thicker. They do seal so they don't spill and things like that. They're less likely to expand and contract because of that thickness. So there are some plastic gas cans that will get the job done. Now, what I like to use is these steel NATO jerry cans. They are a really rugged steel construction. They're nice and thick, and they're not going to expand and contract with the temperatures as much as these plastic ones will. They also have a locking lid that locks up really tight and prevents any kind of leaking and prevents those vapors from getting out. Really, something like this you could just throw in the back of the truck. It doesn't even have to be sitting up. It doesn't matter what you do, knock this thing over. It's not going to spill. It's very durable. And it really solves a lot of the concerns that you would have with your standard plastic gas cans. Now let's take a look at some of the features of these gas cans. Like I said, they do have a locking lid. So all you have to do is rotate this pin here and pull it out. And then that will allow you to raise this latch. As you can see, it gets a nice tight fit, and it does have a very nice rubber gasket here that's going to prevent any kind of leaking, prevent any of those vapors from getting out. It also has an airflow cavity right here that just allows you to pour it a lot easier. So as you're pouring, the air will circulate in there and allow you to get a nice clean flow of fuel while you're pouring. Now, if you get a real NATO jerry can, they are also going to be treated on the inside to prevent rust and things like that over time. I say real jerry can because there are a lot of Chinese fakes out there that you can get for 20 bucks. If you see a jerry can for 20 bucks, it is not a real jerry can. And I will show you a few things that can let you know if you have a real jerry can or if it's a fake one. One thing is the locking lid. A lot of the fake ones will just have a twist top. That's not gonna give you that secure lockup like this lid will. Another thing that you'll notice is on this one, that seam where these two sides are welded together is recessed. It's the same on the bottom, so that if this was to bump into anything or whatever you're sitting on is not going to scratch and chip away at this seam to where you'll eventually get leaks. The fake ones don't have a recessed cavity there, and with those, that seam just sticks out away from the body of the can. For one thing, they won't sit straight, they'll wobble around. And for another, if you're storing these on concrete or if they get banged around, it would damage that seam, and you'd start to have leaking issues and stuff like that, which you won't have with the real NATO jerry cans. And I will link to these in the description below so you can get a real one that's gonna last you longer and work better for your purposes. Another way to spot the cheap fakes is that right here on the handle where this one has a full complete weld all the way across, the cheap ones will just have spot welds here and there that really aren't even very good welds. So the handle's not going to hold up as good every time. They're not treated on the inside, so you will get rust issues. So what I'm getting at is you want to make sure that you're getting a real NATO mil-spec jerry can if you're going to order one. And you can see here when you close that lid, it gets a really nice tight lockup. You can actually feel it sealing as you're pushing down on that handle. Another thing is they have these really nice beefy handles, and the way it's designed, you can either carry one at a time, or if you want to butt two up next to each other like this, you could carry two at a time like this. So it's a really nice design. It's nice and slim and rectangular, so it is going to store well. And like I said, that real sturdy steel construction is going to give you a lot of durability. Now, sometimes these will come with nozzles, but oftentimes they don't. So they do sell these separately. This is a NATO jerry can nozzle, and it has the same locking feature that you would see on the lid. So when you open that lid, you pull that lid back and you just put this nozzle on, and it's going to lock down in place the same way that the lid does. And it has that same rubber gasket on there that's going to prevent any leaking. You do not have to worry about this thing leaking all over your car when you're pouring it into the gas tank or anything like that. It is just a free flow nozzle, so it doesn't have any of those annoying safety features that you see on the new cans. It is flexible, so you can use it in tight spaces if you need to. So that is a nice feature. Another thing that you could use, and that I use very often, is one of these super siphons. Now all this is a siphon hose with a special end on it, and you can see it has a little glass ball in there, and you can hear it when it shakes. So all you would do is you would drop this end down into your gas can, you'd put this end into your gas tank, and you just give it a shake. And every time that glass ball bounces up and down, it's going to push fuel up and allow that fuel to push up into the hose and down into your gas tank. It'll just have a free flow siphon and siphon all that gas out of the can into your tank. So that's another great product you can use along with these jerry cans. All right guys, now that we've talked about what kind of container you should store your gas in, there's a few other things we need to think about. Number one, most gas nowadays has at least 10% ethanol in it. So for stored gas that you're going to store for a long time, you want to make sure you go somewhere where you can get non-ethanol gas. it's going to store a lot longer than ethanol gas will. So make sure you're getting non-ethanol gas. There is a website you can go to that can help you find gas stations that offer non-ethanol gas in your area, and I will put that here at the bottom of the screen. So make sure you're using non-ethanol gas for your gas storage. Another thing you want to make sure you're doing is keeping it out of direct sunlight. You want to store it inside of some type of shed, or at least under a lean-to where it's not getting direct sunlight. Your best possible storage area is going to be a cool, dark place, somewhere where you can get a fairly constant temperature. At least keep it out of direct sunlight. That's going to keep that expanding and contraction to a minimum, and it's going to prolong the life of your gasoline. Another thing you're going to want to do is put some type of fuel stabilizing additive into it. I like to use a product called Stabil, and I'll put that up here on the screen. Stabil is just a gas additive that stabilizes that gas for long-term storage. Now typically gas stored in a regular plastic gas can without any kind of additive in it that has ethanol in the gas, really Exxon recommends that you use that within 2 months of purchasing the gas. Now that's not a very long time, but if you're doing all these things, you can prolong that. So non-ethanol gas, make sure you put an additive in there like Stabil. Seafoam is also a good option for stabilizing the gas, and that's going to greatly extend that. If you're using a nice sturdy metal NATO jerry can like these, that's going to help prolong it. So if you're doing all these things, making sure it's stored out of direct sunlight, if you're doing all these things, your gas can be stored for a year or even 2 years if you're doing all these things. Something else to think about, guys, is you want to make sure that it's stored away from any kind of open flame or spark. You also want to make sure it's stored in a well ventilated area. And when you fill these up, make sure you label them. Put a piece of tape on there and just label the date that you filled it up and whether or not you put stabilizer in it. That way you can keep it rotated out. Make sure you're always using the oldest gas and keeping it rotated. I typically like to rotate mine out at least once a year, and that's worked out great for me. Now, I hope this video has helped you out, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and give us a thumbs up. You can also support the channel by joining us over on Patreon. I'll put a link to that on the screen, as well as our Facebook, so you can follow us there. We really appreciate that. You can also visit pilotpatriotapparel.com for some really nice patriotic and Second Amendment t-shirts. But the bottom line, guys, is it is really nice to have some emergency fuel stored up for those emergency situations when maybe the power's out or the gas station is out of gas and you need to fill up your car, you need to fill up your generator and keep your family comfortable. But thanks for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe, and stay prepared.